Okay, welcome back. Henk, are there some questions?
Sure, yeah. I have here a question, and you talked about the fundamental identity of all life. How can there be forerunners?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And actually, the identity of all beings is an essential identity. So you can also see that every being is a unique being. And if you look at going back through to our first principles, there's spoken of not only boundlessness but also it's eternal. It's so that also means that every being has already been there since eternity, and that also means that every being has evolved throughout eternity. And you can imagine that after all these cycles of evolution, that's a very unique path that every being has chosen in all this, from eternal, the eternal, where there was no starting point up till now. But the identity really is in essence. And so, in essence, we all have the same boundless capability. But because there is free will, the one can be much more spiritually directed and therefore evolving faster than the average human being, who may be more in the middle, and some laggards who may be much more, still more attracted to the material, while the rest is progressing. So there you see that the fundamental free will creates this difference in degrees. Now that doesn't mean that in essence these beings are also different. So in essence we are all one, and actually we need each other, and we can help each other in this evolution. So that's what. So the difference in degree does not mean that. Actually, what you see from Theosophy is actually that the furthest evolved beings have progressed, but have then chosen to more or less stall their evolution, so to come to a standstill, just to help the others lagging behind. And I think that's that's also, if you reason from unity, well, it's more like a sort of caterpillar that goes further, but then make sure that the rest can also step by, and the unit as a whole can progress.
I like the image of the caterpillar. I like it. Very good. I remember it. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, another question is, are the stages of human evolution the same for everyone, or are there beings that skip a stage?
Also a very good question, and that's also part of our main key thoughts. So in the third proposition of Theosophy, there is stated that there is this obligatory pilgrimage for every being. And that sounds a bit like, okay, is there something that obliges us from outside of us? No, that's not the meaning. The obligatory means that we have to go through every stage and evolve from our own inner powers and urges and abilities. So we cannot skip anything. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So every being will go through the plant stage, through the beast or animal stage, through the human stage, and then become just a primitive divine being, and then evolve further in more advanced divine beings, etc., etc. It never ends.
So in fact, each stage is also a preparation for the next.
Yes, you could say so, yeah.
Yeah. And we have here another question. How can the influence of more developed beings, so forerunners, be experienced by humanity now?
Very good question. Actually, I will talk about that in the third part. So, let's please park it for now. And if it's not sufficient enough, please ask again after the third part.
And perhaps you can attach to that, because probably it will also best in the third part, is here a question about blessings. How can you, from theosophical viewpoint, think about blessings?
I'm not so familiar. I know this more from Christianity, but the blessing, it's Easter, of course. That's why.
So someone else from outside is wishing you the best. Somehow like that.
Right. You know that there is. We are thinking a bit more nuanced about it. I'm thinking, how can I keep this short and simple? We say everything is life. So we also say that thinking is also something that involves beings. So thoughts are actually living beings, living entities. And so thoughts can come and go. And actually, if we can say, okay, maybe we can use this thought power that we have for, well, good wishes for others, like blessings are. But the point is that what is really good, or you could say noble, and then we rather say good and bad are pretty difficult terms. They are very relative, depending on culture, etc. So we say a good way to discern between, instead of using good and bad, is in the motive between selfish and unselfish. So then you have to question, okay, if we can have a really unselfish thought about someone and then use that as a blessing for someone, well, do we help someone by that? But then you have to question, how do you really know that it's an unselfish thought? And then I come back to this idea of thoughts as living beings, because we are responsible for these thoughts, and they are really energies. They have impact. So taking in account that every being has free will and that we should respect every being to have free will, we can, from a good motive, do a blessing for someone, but it can also influence that person. And if we are not completely sure that it is an unselfish thought, and to be honest, who can say of himself that he's really so pure and unselfish that this is a safe way? So we're a little bit nuanced, thinking nuanced about that. Actually, we say that the safest way is to make it universal. So not to think, because also when we think about other people, sometimes we sympathize with them, sometimes we do not sympathize with them. That shows that there is already something personal involved. But if we really are impersonal, we can make this blessing, so to say, something more universal. So like an ideal for the whole world, for all living beings, that they may be in peace or free from suffering, or actually it's better to formulate it positively, that they can evolve their inner capabilities, for instance. And I think that is a safer way to...
In fact, you stretch then, of you point at the fundamental characteristic of the cosmos, so cooperation, etc., and you leave it to the person how to express it in his way or her way, to find his way and his choices, etc. Because it is, in fact, you said it dangerous to push someone in one direction or the other.
With respect for the own individual self-directed evolution, so to say. Yeah.
Thanks. And there's also the question: what books can you recommend us? Well,
oh, many. Talking about, well, not. I think about evolution. Well, there are a few books I can recommend, especially from Gottfried de Broecker. So, Man in Evolution is one, which is really more connected to the more scientific teachings. And another is The Fundamentals of Esoteric Philosophy, which explains this whole evolution during the whole, you could say, embodiment of the planet Earth. All these different stages of evolution are really well explained there. But this is a thick book, I think more than 700 pages, so if you have a summer, then you can, I can really recommend it to read it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I think those are the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we will continue with our second part, which is mainly about technology. So technology literally means the study of technique, and technique is derived from the Greek word techne, meaning ability or skill, and logi means study of. In a more general definition, you can find, for instance, in Wikipedia, where it says the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes or applications. And in everyday language, technology refers mainly also to the application of technical knowledge than the study per se. And we mostly talk about new technologies when new applications are found. But why do we even have technology? Well, fortunately, we can turn to a theosophist from an earlier age to give an answer to that, the wise Plato. And in his dialogue Philebus, Plato takes shipbuilding as an example. And in Socratic manner, the question is raised therein, does shipbuilding exist because of ships, or do ships exist because of shipbuilding? And of course, he implies here that technology is always in the service of making something. It exists for the sake of something, for the sake of some being. He continues, I hold that all ingredients, as well as tools, and quite generally all materials, are always provided for the sake of some process of generation. I further hold that every process of generation in turn always takes place for the sake of some particular being, and that all generation taken together takes place for the sake of being as a whole. Thus, we could conclude shipbuilding consists of materials, of tools, of techniques to produce or make ships, and we make ships to transport people, and we transport people for the sake of being as a whole. Communication between people, trade between people, all for the sake or the development, the generation or evolution of human beings. The evolution of humanity as a whole, as we could indeed conclude with Plato. Put more succinctly, technology always serves to generate something, for the benefit of a living being, and ultimately for the evolution of the whole. Now, people have always used technology, from simple tools like stone axes to very sophisticated machines. But the state of technology reflects the average human mentality. As human beings, we develop our thinking, our mentality, and it is our mentality that defines our degree of human evolution, as we have discussed. So the question is, what ideas do we generate? Are they universal ideas, impersonal, noble, and compassionate? Or are they less universal and more material, more focused on desire or vital or personal profit? Now, if we think about our current technologies, and mainly the more recent ones, all kinds of web services, platforms, web shops, web apps. And you see the keyword here is often business model, right? Think again of the characteristic of our current stage of evolution. We are now in the stage of developing the kama or desire principle of our thinking with the intellect as a substage, which is mainly used for the sake of these desires. For instance, the business model. And you see there are always mixed motives there. Some are more selfish, some are more unselfish. So we really think of a service that helps people, but also to make profit by it. And even maybe so much profit that we can retire early. So you can see that our technology follows our average stage of evolution. And you can also see that the development of technology develops along with, for instance, the rise and fall of civilization. For example, you can also interpret this with the different elements, which are analogous to the 7 principles. Elements: air, earth, water, air, fire, ether, and 2 more and beyond. We can see, for instance, if we look more at the technological developments, that in the Middle Ages, earth was, at least in the Western world, more or less the main element. And we were focused on, the agriculture. Technology was really very simple, not too difficult, mainly used for agriculture, for instance. And then there came an age where water became more prominent, where there were the seafarers and the colonists coming up. Succeeded by an age in which air was more prominent as an element. We invented, for instance, steam engines using hot air, and we invented the first airplanes. Then came fire as the dominant element. Think of jet propulsion, jet engines, electricity. And now we are in an age where the ether element is more prominent, where we have radio, we have electronics, we have the internet, all more subtle forms of technology. Now, neither the development nor the deployment or the use of technology is neutral. Our human motives are always connected to it. Do we use it for the whole, or do we use technology for selfish purposes? I will explain this further using a few examples. First of all, a classic example from the so-called techno-philosophy world. It is used in an article called "Can Artifacts Have Politics?" In other words, can things or technologies exercise human values, or are they always neutral? Well, actually, we're now looking at what is also called a racist bridge. This is a bridge in the state of New York, and at the time it was built, there was this planner, this programmer for all these parts of architect and civil engineering in the state, who was slightly racist or seen as racist later by historians. And this is a bridge over a road that went towards the beach in New York. And the bridge was so low that the public transport buses could not go under this bridge. So that means that the buses to the beach could not reach the beach on this road, but had to make this whole round around another area to get to the beach, or not even that beach, but another part of the coast. And actually, what they thought what happened was that they deliberately planned this bridge so the people mainly from low income areas with many black people at the time, that these black people could not reach the beach where the white people from that part of the state went to the beach. Well, the story later proved difficult to really substantiate. We couldn't check the motives from the guys who planned this. But actually the example still serves that these things occur and that really artifacts, in a sense, do have politics. Well, fortunately, the reverse also happens, where we can see that artifacts promote human values. For instance, this building in Rotterdam, the city in the Netherlands, called the Van Elle factory, named after the coffee brand. They roasted and made coffee there, amongst others. And this building is built between the 1927 and 1930, under direction of Kees van der Leeuw, not coincidentally a Theosophist, and was based on was at that time really an example of modern architecture. Why it's also the reason why it's now on the UNESCO list of World Heritage, because it was the first factory built really light, with a lot of daylight coming in, with very spacious rooms. You can see on the image one of the examples where you see the machines, and then a lot of glass, a lot of light, with a lot of focus on hygiene and a safe place to work. So the factory workers really looked forward to go and work there. And although the old function of a coffee factory has disappeared, it is now still a very popular workplace for all kinds of companies, mainly in the ICT sector. And I also worked there myself for a couple of years and always enjoyed going there to my office. Now let's take a look at a more modern example of technology, which is now much in question, namely the technology artificial intelligence, or in short, AI. Now it's always good, especially with these more complex technologies, if we want to assess what is their use and what is their effect, to first look at what they really are, and more demythologizing, because there are many new technologies and already they come with a lot of expectations, and a lot of expectations are also raised for getting attention and raising money to invest in these technologies. But if we really want to sober analyze these technologies, it's good to just first take a look, what is it really and how does it work? Take, for example, an AI tool as ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is a generative AI tool generating text, and based on a so-called prompt or a simple command. This AI program generates text like answers to questions, but also entire articles, essays, summaries, or even test questions. And the output looks very good and is also often very useful. But of course there's a catch. Because if you don't fully understand what it is, what these large language models which are behind tools like ChatGPT are, and if we just take the answers they give for granted, we can well be deceived. Why is that? Well, in this article where you're looking at right now, computer expert Stephen Wolfram explains very well how large language models like ChatGPT actually work. They're trained with lots of data, used by web crawlers, and also with human moderation. And this makes the output output appear to be very human-like, although in fact they are based on statistics. ChatGPT and other large language models are more or less prediction machines. Like Wolfram writes here on the bottom, it's just adding one word at a time. It always guesses which word fits best after several previous ones, and also taking into account all words in a sentence. So it's actually a form of statistics on steroids, or a stochastic parrot, as some experts put it succinctly but powerfully. Now, AI not only comes in the form of text, you can also generate images. So somebody prompted the generative AI tool Midjourney to generate an image of a tent with a campfire in front of a lake in a national park. Now, if you look at this picture, it looks pretty real at first. But if you would try to make this picture yourself, the question is how long it will take for the tent to catch fire, with the fire being placed inside the tent. And I guess none of us would recommend this exact setup to survive a night at the mountain lake. Now, because AI is not a form of life or consciousness, it cannot embody itself and misses the practical experience to discern if this would really be a realistic image or not. Now, you can also generate AI video now. There is this new tool, also from OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, called Sora, that does that. And that doesn't always go quite right either. So here, if you take a good look at the video that is created here, you can see that some things are not so right. If you take a look, for instance, at the head of a woman, which is turned a bit more than the average human being can do. And if you look carefully, you also see on the left with the stool of the man that there is some foot blowing in the wind. I think anatomically that would be quite a challenge for a person. So the point is that often it looks very beautiful and realistic, but tools like AI themselves are unable to perceive these rarities, and they can only perceive how we react to it, so to say, by responding with other prompts, for instance. But it will not prevent these tools from making these kinds of mistakes. And because it is statistics based, it may be less common, but that doesn't mean that these mistakes can be ruled out. Finally, another example also of the abuse that can be made of these tools. For example, $500 billion in stock market value actually evaporated in a very short time due to a fake image of an explosion at the Pentagon generated with generative AI tools and shared via a social media platform, Twitter or X. Now, fortunately, the impact of this type of fake news has remained limited, and people really could verify that this was not the case. But it does show how things can potentially go wrong with, some real-world effects. So, starting with demythologizing, what is it really? And then, for instance, with AI, we can see they're, in essence, more or less prediction machines, statistics on steroids, and therefore errors cannot be avoided, which is not, the end of the world as long as we are conscious of it and realize that we shouldn't rely on these machines completely. Now, we can also state clearly from a consciousness perspective that AI has little to do with real intelligence. Intelligence is our thinking faculty, manas, the universal principle of life. And life itself has also been defined by Plato as self-motion, the ability to act and react to the environment out of itself, out of the being itself, from the boundless capabilities of the being itself, and thus life can evolve. And this is a essentially boundless, limitless process. Well, AI, of course, is not life. It is limited to a data set, however large that set may be, but it cannot act by itself. There's always input required, and the essence is statistics. It does not evolve, it just reuses the data that it has as input. And the output is something that only appears to be human-like or real, instead of it really being like intelligent. And there's the catch, that the better something appears to be, the more misleading it potentially is. Which brings us to the next question: does this technology then help us to actually become a better human being? Does it help us in our evolution, or does it rather, you could say, dehumanize? So that's the question: what does it really do? What values does it promote or restrict? We will give some examples again of what goes wrong first, and then also give a good example. To start with, AI chatbots used for customer services. So you see actually more and more of these chatbots in customer services. And here you see this conversation where the chatbot asks the customer, "How may I help you?" And someone asks, "Well, hi, are you able to take refillable water bottles into the venue? Maybe going to a hotel or something." The chatbot answers, "We don't have any events at the moment. Can I help you with anything else?" Well, actually, the customer wants to know, "Can you take water bottles in?" "Sorry, we don't accept takeaway requests. How else can I be of assistance?" Third try by the customer, "Can I bring my reusable water bottle?" And the chatbot answers, "Oh, sorry, we don't allow dogs on the premises." So you see that, well, these complete misunderstandings here. And I read in an interview in the paper a few days ago that one of the customer services employees working at this large ICT company, Booking.com, that he says that he gets more and more problems on his plate that are often caused by these chat robots. Robots that misunderstand the customer because they can place every question. And also, and he says this happens a lot, customers who break off a conversation with a chat robot and want to speak to a human. He actually says chatbots make people angry and that end up being more work. And from these examples we can understand why. Now, last week there was this research report from the National Voice Monitor, an annual survey of customer service in the Netherlands, that found that the Dutch are increasingly dissatisfied with the quality of customer service, and the big problem that it is being automated, while we really don't want it. It's said that only 1% of Dutch people who contact a company prefer a chatbot, and the majority of people, when faced with a problem, just prefer to give a call and talk to a real human being. And the experts say that it's actually the use of technology in customer service that has been an end in itself for years. And the idea is that using technology will eventually save money. We don't need any people working anymore at the customer service. And whether the customer is really helped is more or less secondary. And so he says chatbots have actually been experimented on customers live for years, which is of course a bizarre situation. Now this is in customer services, which has not so much risks, but we see actually that these chatbots now are used in healthcare advice. And there are even now also because of the large waiting list in healthcare that they give depressed people, for instance, a chatbot to talk with in the hope that they can alleviate their suffering. But of course it's really hard to see if it works well, and there are actually examples where chatbots actually acknowledge someone to commit suicide even. So it's really the quality goes unchecked and is more or less experimenting now on how do you say human beings that need better help. And a few months ago, there was also this report in the Netherlands called Blinded for People and for Justice, released about the Dutch childcare benefits scandal, which was a big scandal here in the Netherlands, where a political scandal, where there were false allegations of fraud made by the Tax and Customs Administration that accused an amount of about 25,000 parents of making fraudulent benefit claims, requiring them to pay back the allowances they had received in their entirety, and which in many cases amounted to tens of thousands of euros, driving families into severe financial hardships. And especially because of the by increasing the debt with large interests. Now, this scandal led to the collective resignation of the government in early 2021. And researchers from the Dutch Amnesty International showed that ethnic profiling and social class discrimination was actually going on in the tax administration, partly due to the algorithms or the technology used. So you see there are big risks if we rely too much on these so-called smart algorithms and artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, there are not only disadvantages, there is also good news. For instance, that AI helps doctors to better detect cancer, helping radiologists instead of putting them out of business, only giving the radiologist, look again at this picture, you might, because from my, I also use the anthropomorphization, but according to the artificial intelligence, it would be good to take another look at the picture. And here the idea is to help doctors instead of replacing them. And they're very enthusiastic, said, now there is a 30% rate of false negatives, so to say, and this AI helps to improve that much better. And here you can see the principle of what we also call human in the loop, that there is always human oversight with the technology. And then it can really make make us do our job better, so to say. Now, another interesting example is the AI that won from in this game called Go, from a famous Go player. And actually, when the AI did that, a lot of experts in this game were surprised by the strategy used by the AI, and it actually showed that there was this whole opening up of a way of playing the game, and that they learned from this AI, and then actually they all learned that, and now it's not anymore so easy for this AI to win of the Go players. But it shows that AI can give people new or bring them to new ideas. And another idea is that actually this customer service worker I talked about said, well, if the AI would be like a co-pilot for us, helping us to show to filter out what kind of problems customers are experiencing, then we can help customers quicker and solve their problem. So that the principle of human in the loop, I think, is very important. So back to the question, does technology aid us in becoming better human beings? Well, we have seen examples that it, doesn't really help us or even dehumanizes us, but also examples where technology really does help. And of course, this also depends on the motive. But that's not so simple either. Let me explain that. Because always different motives plays a role when we talk about technology. First, of course, we have the motive that drives the development of the technology. And here we see that again this average mentality of desire and the intellect used for the desire, and most of the times still personal desires, that we want, for instance, to save money, get a higher profit. And then we see, for instance, that in supermarkets that the cash registers with the people are moving away, and then helping people, people can scan their own groceries. But now they see actually there is more and more being stolen in the supermarket. And they actually found out through research that if there are less people in a supermarket, more is stolen. And now as a solution, they think, well, maybe we should place cameras. So people will not steal because they're on a camera. So you see here that technology sometimes introduces new problems and then are being solved by more technology. And well, there is this cycle of technology solving the problems of technology, solving the problems of technology, etc. And you see it also, for instance, with AI. And people can use AI generating text for fraud, for instance, in schools. Instead of writing the essay yourself, you make AI do it. Or forms of plagiarism that are used using AI. And then as a solution, they have to they come up with AI detectors to check if the texts are made by AI. Now you see these cycles going on, and actually the big problem is, of course, the desire mentality itself. And we want to earn more and more, and we are actually sacrificing decent human work for lower quality by technologies. Now then we have, of course, the motive that is driving the use of technologies. Why do we use technologies ourselves? Is it because it makes our life easier? Things can go faster? Is it cheaper? For instance, we want the cheapest book. We use a platform like Amazon. But Amazon, with this huge technology, also was the cause that many of the bookstores are now closed. And even to the point where there's sometimes hardly any alternative than ordering books at this giant big tech company, where we are sort of locked in and they can raise their prices and we don't have any alternative anymore. So it's also our own motives that sometimes drive towards more of this desire mentality with all the effects. And then we have, of course, the motive that guides our evaluation of technology. For examples, there are emotions like fear, or on the other hand, excessive enthusiasm. For instance, with AI, there are the AI developers themselves were the ones who warned that, AI may be a big threat for humanity. But actually, some of the criticizers say, well, they do this deliberately because they get the attention and then, they can make use of this attention, get more interest for their technologies and more investors, etc. On the other hand, the excessive enthusiasm, the thinking that AI will solve all world problems, climate change, etc., is most of the time is also not really founded on good reason. So we think that it's better just to be sober, analyze, unbiased, in more demythologizing. What is the technology? How does it work? What does it do? And what values are promoted or maybe restricted by it? And again, these evaluations also feeds the development and the use. If done in a good way, it can turn the development in a good direction and also make us aware that our use has some certain effects and that we are responsible, and maybe we should choose other platforms to work with, platforms that have more universal values. For instance, Wikipedia, spreading knowledge without any profit, where all can contribute, etc. So I think that's those are important steps if we look at the motive, but we see it can become a bit complex. And then to conclude, maybe a general warning given by one of our teachers, H.P. Blavatsky, in her article on the modern age, or Kali Yuga, that started 5,000 years ago and will continue for another couple of, hundreds of thousands of years. A remark that she made almost 150 years ago about the pitfall of specialization on the technical level. As she says, access of technical and special knowledge very often acts to prevent men from apprehending the truth. Something to think about. So, to conclude this part, first of all, that technology in general serves to generate something for the benefit of a living being and ultimately for the evolution of the whole. That it isn't neutral, it's not independent of the mentality of its creators, and its use is also not independent of the mentality of its users. And that both fear and exaggerated expectations regarding technology do not really aid us in our evolution. Now, the next part we will look at what Theosophy tells us about the future of humanity and what role does technology have to play, if at all. Okay, let's pause for another 3 minutes and time for your questions. See you in 3 minutes. Okay, welcome back, Henk. Are there questions?
Yeah, Erwin. There are 2 questions. I start with an ethical question. There is free access to knowledge, but as long as desires in human beings are still in the foreground, how can we prevent that knowledge from being misused? And, as we see worldwide, serious consequences may ensue from this.
Yes. Actually, the third part of the lecture is mainly about that, but I can say shortly that, of course, this begins with this mentality, like the questioner already says. It's the desire mentality. But what can we do? I think is spread more knowledge like this about what really is the you could say the purpose of evolution, and that we are not here just for one life, that we are actually eternal beings in a stage of evolution, learning every life to cooperate more and more with others and become more and more united with others, like the universal brotherhood that is actually there to make it also real in daily life, so to say. And what else I wanted to say? Yes, the best way we can do it is just start with ourselves. That's the most important way. So we cannot interfere with free will, and unfortunately, the average human beings are still much more into this. You could say tempted by the material progress, and show that there is that there is knowledge that shows actually the spiritual direction of life, but first and foremost, be yourself an example of to live by that knowledge, and I think that's the best way.
You may perhaps say that not the fact that we are developing desire is the problem, but our big point is our view. So our
direction,
in fact, our life philosophy, or what we understand of life.
Yeah.
That in fact there is, I think, the big.
Yes.
Because
exactly.
we can use desires just as well.
Yeah.
For the well-being.
We need a desire. We need a desire, but the orientation is so much still towards the material progress, material well-being, and that also results in a lot of strife. All the inequality, because we are all focused on this material, and that would be so. I guess a lot of different if we realize that all the energy that we invest in this material progress is actually more or less lost. I mean, and that's what the third part is actually about. That, well, if you realize that our human evolution is mainly an evolution of consciousness, of thinking, of more universal thinking, of developing wisdom, etc., why invest so much? All the brightest minds are working on these technologies. Well, what do they do? Maybe sell a few more products, create bad ads for people to click on, and
it's usually no basic needs at all. Eh?
No, it's only unnecessary needs. It's really
Thanks. And then here's a question a little bit more specified about books to recommend. Is you mentioned already 2 books. That was the Fountain Source. No, sorry.
The Man on Evolution and the Fundamentals of Esoteric Philosophy about evolution. Yeah.
And the question is, can we find there also information about Theosophy and technology?
Well, actually, it's not so prominent. You can find it in the Secret Doctrine from Madame Blavatsky. Of course, that is written in 1875, but there are some general remarks still applicable today. And she talks about, and actually, it was, of course, a time of in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, where there was also these great expectations about what technology would bring and the progress, etc. And so she also describes in the technology in previous evolutionary cycles, big cycles like the Atlantean time, where we were supposedly much more advanced in technological progress. So there you can find some information here and there. There's also a really short fragment from Mr. Kok, but I guess it's only available in Dutch, which is a bit on the technology and the future of humanity. And you can find in the esoteric tradition, also by the Peruker, he makes a lot of links to the scientific discoveries at that time, but it's not really on technology, but more on let's say, what they find, the idea of relativity from Einstein, for instance, and other thinkers at that time.
But yet, those were often the start of a kind of technology. So
Right,
it's
right.
very
Yes.
much related.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those were... oh no, sorry. I see another one. How can we protect ourselves against all the lower desire influences coming to us and our fellow men through, for example, advertising?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think very important is to become more conscious thinkers. So if we realize that that there are these 7 aspects of thinking, we also explain them in more in detail in other lectures. I didn't do it in this lecture, but you can find it also in our course and in other lectures, previous lectures. That there, for instance, these personal parts, that is more the lower side of us, is characterized by like thinking, emotional thinking, vitality, the urge to act, and the desire, for instance. And these are many times used in advertising. And if we can recognize them within ourselves, we will not be tempted so much, I guess. So if we recognize that, that it is their purpose to tempt us to follow our personal, and especially if we recognize the more impersonal aspects, the wisdom in ourselves, the higher intellect, and the more compassionate, the sense of oneness in ourselves. If we focus on that, we will not be tempted so much anymore. So, and we can all recognize these characteristics. We can also recognize if we invest our thinking in these aspects, what the effect is, what kind of person it makes us, and then I guess we will be less and less tempted. And and there again, our example first is, I think, helping others. And if they want to know more, then we can always direct them to the sources that we have.
Yeah, I think that's clear. Yeah, sure. That was the questions this round.
Then we go to the last part, technology and the future of humanity, a bit shorter than